The Mets, on the other hand, who were absolutely embarrassed today, these know-nothings using an opener, like they know how to use an opener, still sit atop the NL East, and they haven't played good baseball. I don't think the Mets have played good baseball. They're in first place.
They haven't put it all together. That's the thing, right? One week, the pitching's really good, the hitting's not there. The next week, the hitting will start to come around, and the pitching takes a step back. Today, for example, the bullpen, in a bullpen game, was horrible. Joey Lucchesi comes in. He's been a mess. Jacob Barnes comes in the 8th. Jacob Barnes should not be coming in the 8th, but that's another story. But they haven't put it all together yet either, right? Their lineup, they haven't gotten everything clicking at once, right? Francisco Lindor gets off to a miserable start. I mean, just a horrible start, and he's turning it around. Pete Alonso, he started out well. He was in a bit of a slump until today when he hit a home run. So it's a matter of putting it all together, which they will do at some point before the end of the season, but they just haven't done that yet, and yet here we are in first place. So you can't ask for a whole lot more, I don't think.
You know what I've learned? And this is a reason take. This sounds like a Jimmy Sullivan take. It rarely comes together for any team, even the best teams. The Knicks, for instance, R.J. Barrett hasn't been great the last couple of games. They're still rattling off some victories here. If you have the talent, if you have the depth, it's going to work out. The Yankees, in my mind, through the first, let's say, 40 games, haven't looked good at all. The Mets haven't clicked on all cylinders, but it's not supposed to click for those great teams. The great teams are the ones that can withstand that.
Yeah, and it's got to click when it comes to playoff time. And I hope that I believe that there is going to be playoff baseball in New York come October. And you know what? They're going to be packed crowds as well, and the energy is going to be unbelievable. I think we have 2 teams in this town going to the playoffs this year. At least I hope so, for the Mets' sake. And the Yankees look like they're on their way too, if all goes right. Now, that's when everything has to click, because throughout the season you have your ups and downs where one part of the team is carrying you, whether it's the starting pitching or it's the bullpen, and we've seen some flashes from the Mets bullpen, but obviously not a unit that I trust, or the offense is carrying you for a couple weeks, let's say in the middle of July. When it comes to playoff time, it's got to all come together, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves talking about October, but my next point is that when we get there, a lot rides on the manager. A lot rides on Luis Rojas. You mentioned him going to Barnes today in the 8th inning. I don't trust him. I think he leaves a lot to be desired, and I think it could be a big issue for the Mets. Do you have a true leader in that clubhouse?
He looks in over his head.
He does. And there's times when I sit there and I listen to what he's saying, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I hate to say it, but
he can't answer a question directly. And the same could be said about a lot of these young managers who are almost installed as a segment of the front office in some way. But there are certain questions where it's just an obvious answer. The fan base wants some truth, and Rojas just can't spit it out. And you can tell that mindset kind of bleeds into the dugout, to the clubhouse. Yeah,
you have a problem there because you also need a team leader, right? If you need a player. And Francisco Lindor came in, and it was assumed with a 10-year contract and who he is that he was going to be that guy. Well, he walked into a clubhouse with a lot of big personalities as it was. And I shouldn't even say big personalities, but guys like Jeff McNeil who have been there for more time and have carried the team in a way. And I don't think that they so quickly embrace that role for Francisco Lindor. Now, where does the manager come in? Well, he's got to make it all work. And I don't know that the guy really has a backbone. I mean, he didn't appear to have a backbone in Philadelphia when the Mets probably should have thrown a baseball behind somebody, and it didn't seem to cross his mind. I got to get a little fire behind him, and you're right to say he's kind of a part of the front office because he's just, he came in after the Beltran thing, and it made too much sense for them. But then you need a manager who's going to work independently of the front office, right? Who's got the players' backs, who the players trust. And I don't have enough on him to rip him because he doesn't give you a lot. But to me, it's a part of the team that I'm very worried about.
718-817-2750, the number to call. Works both ways. Want to hear from you. George from Staten Island. George, what's up?
Hey, guys. How are you? It just feels like yesterday when I called. It's so great to have you guys back.
Good to hear from you, George.
Thanks for calling.
Really, really good to hear you guys. Feeling a lot of optimism on New York sports. I think this is going to be the year baseball comes back into full swing. I'm looking at a Met-Yankee Subway Series. I completely agree with what all of you said. The Yankees haven't struck like their stuff yet. The Mets are not playing like up to par. And when you look at the standings, like they're both up there and they're both competing. I just think the biggest liability for the Mets is going to be Edwin Diaz. Was never a fan of him. Would get rid of him like starting tomorrow, and not really a big fan of Luis Rojas. I mean, between Rojas and Diaz, those are the only two people standing in the way of them in October.
David from the Bronx joins us. What's up, David?
What's up, man? It's a pleasure to be here.
David, it is great to be with you, man. For those who do not know, this is the producer, video coordinator extraordinaire at Fordham Athletics, David Bernard Santana. David, how's your night going?
It's going great. I'm hearing some great thoughts on the Mets and Luis Rojas and Edwin Diaz. And, I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring real quick and mention that, I don't think we should be pushing the panic button real quick. I think as Met fans, we might be getting a little spoiled. I mean, let's think about all the injuries that we have on our roster right now and think back 3 years to the same kind of injuries that would have plagued the season. And we're still afloat, first in the division. I think Rojas is doing his best with what he's got. Would I have kept May in the game yesterday? Probably not. He looked like he was struggling. But, hey, that's also the same pitcher that after imploding on his first relief appearance went to Rojas and said, "You got to trust me. I'm going to get it." So I think he's just trying to show he's got his players' backs. He's trying to show that he's here to support them. And I am all in on Blaster Jacks and Timmy Trumpets with Edwin Diaz. You guys were talking about September. Think about a full-capacity crowd with those trumpets going off. That's going to be electric.
Oh, I love it. And he's bringing some perspective here. Let's be frank about it. The Mets would not be 18-15 in most years with what they've had to deal with so far. I'm looking at 13-18, something like that, something of that nature, where their season would be imploding. And David's kind of zooming out and saying, look, we may be going a little bit too far in. We're putting the microscope on this team when in reality, the Mets are far exceeding what they would normally do with this lackluster of play.
I mean, Manny, you look at Pilar, Villar, Peraza. The front office did a good job investing in guys who were going to come off that bench and produce. And that is all those guys have done. And I think we should be happy to be in the position we are, missing 3 starting pitchers or 4 and a key piece in the bullpen. And this team is going to be great for the months to come, and they just got to wait for everything to gel. I think they got all the right pieces. It's just got to all come together.
And keep in mind, too, they're not missing James McCann, but they may as well be because he's been pretty bad. And maybe he gets it together at some point. Who knows? I think there's reason to be concerned about him. But there's a lot of things that have gone wrong for the Mets early this season. And yet here they are a half game ahead for first place. I think it is a much-needed perspective. Now, I have a lot of legitimate concerns about Luis Rojas, about his management style and how he's done with some of the bullpen moves in game. But you can't deny the reality, which is that, this team has been kind of banged up, and yet here we are, and we're talking about depth. With the Mets, I feel like we're talking a foreign language almost.
And I don't think there's any question that optimism is the right train to be on. I think you've got to be optimistic about this Mets team. And we led with that. We led with the optimism, and then we said, well, there are some concerns. There are bullpen concerns. There's a manager concern. And when I think about when it starts to get really important, those bullpen decisions become so important. I mean, it becomes a chess match, and I don't know that Rojas can play it. But then there's the upside to him. He knows basically every guy in this clubhouse from their time in the minor leagues. So he goes way back with the organization, and so there are positives there. And I think there are positives all around with the Mets.
He was a great temporary fix. They needed someone to step in after that Carlos Beltran fiasco. He was the guy. organizational guy, knows the land, knows the guys. So is it a long-term solution? Time will tell, and I think a lot of that will depend on how the Mets season turns out this time around. But in terms of the short-term fix, you can't really complain about Luis Rojas in that respect. Also want to shout out our last caller, David. Appreciate you calling in. Also appreciate him, Sports Information Director at Fordham, Joe DeBarry, for setting us up with this brilliant Rose Hill Gym setup. If you're watching the simulcast on Facebook or YouTube, you can see us. We wave hello. If you're not watching, it's a beautiful setup, and we appreciate them making this senior show a reality.
Could I go one more thought on Rojas while we're still on him? You're right. He doesn't appear to be a long-term fix. And when Steve Cohen bought the team, nobody brought him in, and he brought in the new management, Sandy Alderson came back, it felt like a moment where they could strike and say, let's go get a manager, let's go get a real skipper. Not that he's not a real skipper, but that's really low. But that's a really low blow. I can't.
A fake skipper.
But it felt like an opportunity. They passed up on it, which meant they really believed in him and they were sold on him. So maybe Alderson had it right. Time will tell. You're absolutely right. David is absolutely right. They're a first-place team right now with a lot working against them, and they've got guys coming back, pieces coming back. So the bottom line is you should feel good about this Mets team.